There.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, guys. Now I really do get to feel important. Thank you, everybody, for joining me in the crowd, and of course, everybody online. Although the crowd, you guys get more points, and hopefully somebody getting an awesome giveaway today. I'm Lindsay Adler. I'm a portrait and fashion photographer. Oh, yeah. Yes, I wasn't watching. Oh, no, I had it up for time. I just heard myself cheer. It was great. It was wonderful. Anyway. Rude. I am a portrait and fashion photographer here in New York, and today I'm going to be covering DIY holiday fashion shoot. Now, the reason I wanted to do this is every single year, for basically all of the holidays, I try to produce some content that is shareable online. So I'll produce things for Valentine's Day, Halloween, for Christmas. I'll do some kind of New Year's stuff. And I do it for two main reasons. One, it is good to have shareable, relevant content that you can market with, that you can share online. But the other reason is, if you're ever running out of ideas, give yourself an assignment that you have to think about ahead of time. So I know what holidays are coming, I know when it's coming, and so I can be like, oh, that's right. It's about a month, 2 months, whatever it is till the next holiday. Let me start getting creative. However, I don't want creative shoots to cost me a lot of money, because then that's another reason for me to not do them. Like, there's just always so many barriers. So some of the things that keeps me creating is, first of all, I have a go-to creative team. Like, when I'm creating, I have built a hairstylist, makeup artist team that if I say, hey guys, you want to do some Christmas stuff? They'll show up. Like, it's just the people that they're your creative family. And by the way, when I do these shoots, nobody gets paid. I'm not getting paid, they're not getting paid, we're all working for the images. But the expectation is, if I do get a paid job in the future, those are the same people I go back to. But it just means they're my creative family, they're throwing ideas my way, we show up, we shoot, that's great. So that's one way that I get rid of a barrier to making excuses. And then the other thing is I try not to make it expensive. So for DIY holiday shoots, what I do is, you guys know that with, you name it, if it's Michael's or Home Depot or the Dollar Store, they now switch over to the next holiday like 4 months in advance. Like, I swear, I think there was Christmas stuff coming out in like early September, exactly. So what I'll do is I'll go in and I walk around. And all I'm doing is I'm actually giving myself really fun creative problem solving, because I'm seeing what is there that I could make into something cool. So I'm looking around and I'm going, okay, is there anything I could shoot through? Is there anything I could put on the model? Is there anything I could turn into a headpiece? Is there something that I could put makeup on to put a pattern on the face? And so I'm trying to see what is cheap stuff that I could make look interesting. I'm going to show you some examples of this that I've done in the past, and then we're going to actually shoot some of these for some beautiful examples today. So my way of thinking about it is I try to take ordinary things and reimagine it into something extraordinary. Here's the thing. There's two things that's going on there. It's saving me money, but it's also fun. Like, it's pushing me to be like, all right, what other creative ways can I make something look cool? It's one thing when I have stylists and they bring an incredible, $5,000 headpiece. Like, yeah, of course it's going to be cool. That's not really challenging me. It looks awesome already. So it's making it hard for me in a good way. And again, I also use this content not just on social media, but for marketing. So when I send out an email blast around the holidays, whatever holiday it may be, if I've got a nice timely photo up front, it's more relevant. It shows that I'm planning ahead of time. So let's take a look at a couple examples. So this was a $5.99 wreath bow that I got at Kmart, which I don't know if it's still in business, but you guys remember in New York when it was in Astor Place? So I bought it in Astor Place like 10 years ago. The reason I wanted to show you is I have shot this bow so many times. So first of all, it became a headpiece for one, which I think is gorgeous. How about this one? It became a necktie piece for another. Okay, yeah, how about this one? Another detail. All I did is wrap this subject's head in ribbon, and then I put that same bow on her chest as styling. So the same bow I've shot for 3 different Christmas images over 10 years. So it was that $6 earned its keep. Let's look at another example. So I actually have this one with me. This is what in our studio, we affectionately call dollar store couture. What were you calling it? Dollor store? The Dollor store. So we have Target and Dollor. So these, two of these are $1.25 a piece. And there's cheap plastic from the dollar store. If you break it in half, then just using hot glue, that's what it is. And it's just taking one here, flipping it around to make a beautiful headpiece. So a couple years ago, that's a shot that I took with window light. So that is as cheap and DIY as you can get. Dollar store headpiece, and we used, I think it was a total of 3 or 4 of these, and then window light. Super simple. Let's look at another example. So now, I will warn you, glitter. Glitter. I'm like being so careful. Don't kill me. You do not want his wrath, so I'm just going to stay over here. Same thing. So this was, I believe it was either Home Goods or Michael's, going around and finding these really inexpensive poinsettias. And then all we did is just super glue them around and pin it to her hair. But we have it in her hair, on her chest, and that was a one light setup. That is using a single strobe with a beauty dish, and then I used a red background behind her. That particular red, in case you're curious, is the Savage Universal Primary Red. The reason I like that one is if you don't light it, it looks like this rich, like blood red, almost burgundy. It's really, really beautiful. So this was, I don't know, I think it was $13 maybe. I think it was probably less than that because I tend to buy it when the season's over and then keep it for the next year to have it. So I recommend that. There's only a little glitter. I'm looking at him. Probably the most expensive DIY tool I have here is I borrowed this extra large ornament, but I looked it up online. It's $32. But in that, I got the dress on Amazon and those tights on Amazon, and I'm using one bare strobe. It is one light, nothing else. There's no fill, there's no additional strobes. So it's a one light, but making it kind of fun and playful with styling from online. Here's another fun one. This is where we get a little more complicated because you need a good makeup artist to probably do this, but it doesn't have to be. I bought snowflake stencils. We held it up on her face, and then it's basically just face paint to put the snowflakes on the face. We even got this cheap, like I'm talking really cheap synthetic wig, cut it up, and then we painted the snowflakes on it as well. So we're getting kind of holiday there. Here's another example. I did a macro shot. This was a 2-light setup. So I used a beauty dish and then another light with a blue gel. But I was using the 100 macro. And I did that 100 macro to get really close. And I just used these stickers that I got, snowflake stickers. We stuck it all the way around the eye. It gave us some texture, so it made it interesting when we looked up close. Okay, so those are just a couple of things to get you thinking about holiday DIY, but how about other holidays? We were doing kind of Christmas, snow time. How about Valentine's Day? Every single Valentine's Day, I do the same thing, go into the dollar store, or I'll go on Amazon. So we did this, and it's the same idea with the cheap little headband. You picked up one today, right? Like at CVS? Like they're just a couple dollars. Same idea. We just got one of these cheap headbands, and then we covered it with glue and then dipped it in glitter. So that's why it looks like it's a glitter headband. And then it was $7.99 for 120 glitter hearts that we then glued everywhere on the headband. So that's one example. How about this one? I really liked this shot. This was actually more or less done in camera. Bought this on Amazon, and they had, I think it was 24 assorted hearts of like 7-inch, 9-inch, and 11 inches. And we took it and we kind of just stuck it in her hair. And I used a beauty dish with a grid, but what I did is I positioned the beauty dish at an angle where it was reflecting off of the glitter, but not hitting her face. And so that's actually a 2-light setup because I've got the beauty dish with the grid lighting the heart, and then another light behind her lighting the background pure white. So still pretty simple setup. This one, again, getting into just sticking stuff on someone's face. I probably bought like $15 to $20 worth of Valentine's Day stickers, and we covered her with it. This is another example, though, of where, in this particular case, it's a good model, good hair and makeup. But I believe it was the, who's Olivia Rodrigo fan? If you actually saw one of her early album covers, it was just her covered in stickers. It's that same sort of idea, being slightly on trend by kind of referencing that in the photo. How about this? I just did this for Halloween. Women's tights. It was women's tights wrapped around her head, and then we ripped it so she would look like a mummy. Video on our channel. Yes, it is on Adorama's YouTube channel. So those are just all examples to get you thinking. And what I recommend you do is go to the dollar store, go to Michael's, go to Home Depot, go to wherever there are holiday decorations, end of the season, look around and see what captures your attention. That's exactly what I do. So I'll show you some of the things we're going to play with today. So first thing we've got is I got this foam bow. You guys can kind of see it's like cheap foam. It was under $10. I ordered this, came from China. It took like, you know, a week or so to get here. And it's just in these like ribbons. And then they had a how-to video on how to turn it into a bow, all in Chinese. So I had my lovely assistant Lex try to watch and decipher that video today. But I saw it because it was an extra large bow, and I could see this being used in a ton of different fun ways. It could be centered on the chest, it could go behind the head, it could go on the shoulder. So we're gonna play around with this as one of our styling elements. Then there was a whole bunch of these cute little snowflakes that are reflective. I'm curious to see if I hit that with hard light, what'll happen when it reflects. Because it is a shiny surface. Shiny surfaces are great for using things like star filters or black pro mists, but in a studio, they're actually really hard to shoot. Because in a studio, when you're not dealing with ambient light, if the subject isn't facing the light source and they're kind of facing this way, what it's reflecting is blackness. So all of this would just appear solid black. So I'd have to do some sort of creative problem solving to actually make it look interesting. And then last but not least is what she's wearing right now on her head, which I've got a couple examples of this. There were actually, I don't know what it did. Oh, here it is. Perfect. All right, so this is Dollor store, dollar store couture over here. So this is under $10 of these, I don't know, I guess you put it in holiday vase and bouquets that you're decorating with. So it's just lots of little glittery silver stuff. And will you take a look here? So what we did is we shaped it onto a headband, and it is just super glued on, but in a way that makes pretty shapes. So like these, oh God, glitter, oh my God, nobody else are gonna hate it. Oh God, oh it did it, oh, I see the glitter going everywhere. But these were actually already bendy. We didn't do anything to them. That's already how it was intended. And so it was quite easy to bend it into a shape, which is what you see in her headpiece. If you go to the dollar store right now, you can get this. So I'm sending people to the dollar store. Where's my dollar store affiliate link? Okay, perfect. I already had this silver dress that she's wearing in my kit. So I have maybe like 15, 20 dresses that I keep. I shoot over and over again until I'm bored of them, and then I swap a new, 2 or 3 in every year. So we're gonna go with a silver theme, and I'm gonna shoot this and take you through my creative process, but everything that we are shooting today, the styling, is $10 or less for the DIY part of it. Okay, so I'm gonna stand you up here. Let's give this a test, thank you. All right, let's go back to the beginning. So I will take you through the gear, and for the benefit of the people in the audience, if you have a question about gear or technique, you guys can actually ask me, but Seth is also checking the chat if anyone online has questions. Okay, so a couple of things that I was thinking is I think she looks like an ethereal, like winter goddess. Like that's the vibe I'm getting from her. I've actually shot Marcelina before, and she just has this like kind of beautiful imp-like look. So that was my thought behind picking out and building this headpiece. So when I see things that are sparkly and glittery, 2 things pop into my head. First of all, if I use hard light, that's when I'm going to see sparkles the most. Because when you do a soft light, it is less specular and it tends to be a little bit more of an even highlight. But if you pick a harder light, you're going to see those actual sparkles on it. So that's the first thing I was thinking, is let me start with a harder light. And then the second thing I'm thinking is hard light plus sparkles plus star filter equals holiday magic. Like, that was kind of what I was thinking. So that's my thought process in building this first shot. So for my main light, when I got here, I said to Seth, what do we got that's a hard light? Maybe something that can be concentrated. In my head or in my studio, the things I would start to gravitate towards would be either a grid. You can actually put a grid on a bare strobe. Could be a zoom reflector with a grid, which will give you a hard, concentrated light that will be sparkly. That's probably one of the first things I'd look for. I would also likely grab something like an optical spot or an optical snoot. So that's going to allow me to have hard light where I can narrow the beam, so I can have just a small area of illumination that's super specular. Or Seth goes, I got this new toy that I'm really mad that you were trying first, but I'll let you if you're nice to me. So I've got the brand new Profoto. This is the Fresnel Small. So a Fresnel, a very hard light source, and this is to the light source that you would use at the front of it. It has a Fresnel light, which means it's very similar to the light that you'd see in a lighthouse, right? Exactly, the lighthouse Fresnel lens. What's great about it, it's hard light, but it's kind of smooth because of how it bends the light. And it has a knob on the left-hand side that you can adjust to spread the light or concentrate it. So I can light her at this distance, here to here, or I can narrow it to just be at the center of her face. Because I want it to be hard light, but I do need it to hit some of the headpiece, because if it doesn't hit the headpiece, then how's the headpiece going to sparkle? So that's where we're going to start with the first light. The strobe we're using is the Profoto B10X Plus, and this is the 500 watt battery operated strobe. Would you turn down the house lights a little?
Can I see your mic pack for a second?
Was it not on? Boop.
It's cutting
He's
out,
fixing
right?
me.
You hear it cut out? Yeah.
Oh no. She can pull that out if we need.
No comment.
I can't.
We'll see what happens.
Okay, because she definitely, we can work it out. Thank you.
I'm killing the house lights. Keep the model lights on.
No, I got it. It's here. It should already be on.
No, I turned it off because it builds heat.
Hmm.
There you
I don't want that one. I just want this one.
go. There you go.
Okay, cool. Let's see if any of those are on. Perfect. I'm going to turn this off. And can I turn that one off too?
Yeah, I want
Oh, sorry about that.
to calm it down, lady.
I'm sorry. I'm very anxious and excited. Okay. All right. So you guys can see from that angle, I'm grabbing the little handle on the side. And do you see how I can basically just light the center of her face there? And I'm using the modeling light so I can judge this. So at this distance, I can light from the top of her head to just below her chest, or I can have a pretty tight highlight there. We're going to start there, and then I'm going to build in my lights. This is all I have for this first light. So let's give a little test. All right, great. Let's take a look at it. Beautiful. All right, so here's some of the things that I'm looking at with this light. Do you see that that shadow edge is pretty defined? But when I look at her, it's not harsh light. Like, it's still hard and defined, but it's not really aggressive the same way as I'd get with like a bare bulb. With a bare bulb, everything would have a lot more texture and be a lot shinier. That being said, I definitely am still getting a little bit of sparkle on the headpiece. So when I look at this, I like it, but I don't think it's giving me like Ice Queen feel. So when I think ice, I think cool, I think blue, which is why I would add a blue gel. So that's what our second light is going to be. Now, I've specifically, in this case, not chosen a modifier. I'm using a bare bulb because more hard light will give me more sparkles. That also means as long as this is hitting the headpiece, if I want to take that highlight on the face and narrow it so it's only hitting the center of her face, I can still get sparkles on the headpiece because this will be hitting the headpiece to give me sparkles. So I'm going to turn it on. Now, some of the things I'm looking for here is I am turning on the modeling light. Now, the reason I want to do that is when you use a bare strobe. The light goes everywhere. You have no control over it, hardly at all. And because it's a bare, hard light, it'll create really crisp shadows. I can see that behind her head. Now, I can kind of just like change my angle if I wanted. Like if I shot from here, there's no shadow behind her. But the other thing I could do, since I can actually see it, is I can move this fill light. When I move it off to the side here, or I can even change the height a little bit, I'm kind of just focusing on putting the shadow out of my frame. So that's one thing I could do. If I didn't need this to be a hard light, like if I didn't want it to give me more sparkle, if I switch this over to a beauty dish, or maybe even just a grid, what it'll do is it'll control that spill a little bit more, and then I wouldn't have the same distracting shadow. So let's see how I'm looking at the moment with that. Okay, perfect. Beautiful. Okay, so let me show you what's going on here. I'm going to put those two shots up side by side. All right, what I want you to notice is if you look at the first image, pay attention to where the shadows are. The shadow is underneath her jaw, and there's no light hitting the background. Now, if you look with your naked eye, the background's actually white. So if in the photo it appears black, like you see on the left, it means there's no light hitting it. The thing I always encourage people to remember, if you're using gels, gels show up most in shadow areas. So in the first shot, wherever there are shadows, under her chin, on the headpiece, on the background, if I add a gel, that's where I'm going to see that color, which is why in the second shot, that's exactly what you have. Blue on the background, blue on the headpiece, blue underneath the jawline, even blue on the top of her dress. Now, I can turn this up a bit if I want to see even more blue, or if I want it to be a little bit more ethereal feeling, I'm going to lighten this up so the shadows will get lighter, but the blue will also get brighter. So let's do these, same thing. Perfect, great. Pretty. Try from over here. Great. Great, can you turn your shoulders to your right? Beautiful, and stick your chin up just a little bit more, and then chin down a little. Pretty. Okay, so it's looking good. What I might do is I might add just a tiny bit of contrast here, and if I wanted to feel even more blue, I could cool down the white balance. So we're always taught that there's like a correct white balance to things. Typically what you want to do is either use a gray card or set the white balance to whatever matches your light source. So in this case, it's around 5600, but white balance is a good starting point for a real skin tone. I want her to feel icy. So I could go cooler. And so in this case, I've dragged it down from 5600 to like 4000. And now she's looking really, really cool. I think that's looking pretty. So maybe I'll try something like that. I'm shooting into a program called Capture One. In this program, as I'm taking the photos, I'm shooting tethered with a Tether Tools tether cable, and that is plugged into my computer. So that's why as I'm shooting this comes in. What's nice is I can take those changes I just made. I hit the little up button on the right-hand side. Then I hit down, and what it does is it applies those changes to all of the images. I'm shooting raw, but it will give me that preview. So basically whatever changes I did will now come into all the other photos. Couple other notes. I am shooting with the Canon R5 Mark II and the 24-105 2.8 lens. This is the lens that I use 90% of the time because I can have from 24 to 105 at 2.8. Like that's what I need 90% of the time. There's only a couple times where I might need 70 to 200 just to reach like a little bit closer, but I'm doing a beauty shot right now and it's fine. It's more beauty shots like head and shoulders, like maybe from the top of the head to the top of the shoulders that I would need the longer focal length. So the next part of this equation is adding that filter, which I just looked at and is absolutely filthy. Hold on. I knew he would judge me.
I'm not judging. Look at me.
It's fair.
You also got pizza.
I got it. Okay, so the filter that I'm using here is a 4-point star filter. I usually use Hoya or Tiffin when I do this. The reason I'm telling you this is so many people have seen me shoot with star filters. They try it and say it didn't work. It doesn't work for two reasons. A, you might be using soft light. If you try a softbox or a beauty dish, you're not going to get the same reflections. And B, everybody goes and they'll go on like Amazon and get the cheapest star filter and they don't work. I don't know why. I think it's the lines aren't etched in enough. So like, just don't bother. I can't tell you how many people have said it doesn't work. So 4-point or cross screen is what you want. Let's try it again. So I'm gonna put that on the front. This is an 82 millimeter thread size star filter. Okay, same thing. And the reason I shot so many is you'll notice in each frame as she moved her head around, the stars moved slightly. So if I zoom in here, you can see the pretty star filters on the headpiece, but then she moves slightly, and now I've got a big star right there. So I let my subject move quite a bit, but what I want you to notice is this is without the star filter. This is with. Do you see a difference besides the stars? Softer. Because the way a star filter works is it's like refracting the light, and it's actually decreasing your contrast. So whenever I add a star filter, I always add more contrast and more clarity. And clarity is your sharpness in the midtones. And you don't have to add as much as I just did, but just so you could kind of see the difference between the two. Here's the image straight out of camera. And then here's when I add my contrast and clarity, which makes it a lot paler, a lot sharper, a lot more like the kind of snow queen that I was thinking of. Maybe there. Okay, let me shoot a couple more frames of that. And then I'm gonna add one more change before we wrap up this image. Okay, so let's see what happens if I tighten up the light on the face a little bit. And Lex, I'm gonna have you point it just to make sure it's hitting the center of her face. Okay? Let's see. Can you turn this way with your whole body? Great. And then chin right there. Beautiful. Let's see how that's looking. So you can see the image looks more blue because there was more shadow created by tightening the light, which means there's more area for that blue to show up. Okay, now can you kind of do this? Good. All right, and point it right there. Good, and chin up just a smidge. Pretty. Ooh, I love it. Gorgeous. Okay, now do the opposite. Can you spread out the light? Let's see what it looks like with a little bit more coverage. Keep going, even more. Right there. Let's try that. And you're going to get even more sparkles on the headpiece this way. Beautiful. Ooh, okay. Love it. So the only change that I don't know if it necessarily make it better, but the only change I think I want to make is I do want to maybe put a little bit more of a different highlight on the background, like maybe a little spotlight of white behind, make it a little icier, maybe a little glowier. It's not better or worse, it's just I want to give it a try. And by the way, I'm looking at your screen. So as I was shooting these, they start to look a little blown out on the face. But part of the reason it does is because I have my clarity and my contrast pumped so high that when you increase contrast, highlights get brighter and shadows get darker. My point is all of the information's there. So when I pump my contrast, if I'm like, oh, the skin's looking too bright, I can just bring that highlight back down or darken down the face. So it's there, and I usually massage it a little bit more once I pick the final shot. And in case you guys didn't know, in both Lightroom and Capture One, they have new AI masking tools that are insanely smart. So for example, I just created a new layer and I selected the AI brush. And look how it's just selecting her skin. Like that's what that red means. So I could just bring the skin tone down and not affect the highlights or anything else. Or how about this? This just affected only the blue of the background. So if I just wanted to, for example, take the blue of the background, but darken that down more, or lighten that up more, or increase the saturation, the masking lets me do that. Yeah, go for it.
In the chat, they're asking, would you be able to get that star effect with a tight aperture instead of a star filter?
It would be near impossible to get that same effect. It's more if you're shooting, oh, and the question was about if I shot at a really small aperture, like shooting at like f/22, for example, that would work if I'm shooting like into a light source, but not with the reflection. Okay, so next up, let's try this one more thing. So let me borrow this. We're going to turn on, and by the way, I'm just turning this modeling light off so it's not blasted at me when I'm standing there. We are going to do another little DIY adjustment. I'm going to be using something called cinefoil. This is basically black tin foil that you can put on your lights, and it is intended for that purpose. I remember this was when I was in New York in my very first studio. I wanted to block and control light, and so I took duct tape and cardboard, and I taped it onto my lights, and I caught them on fire. Yeah. So don't do this. This is what you're supposed to do. You're supposed to use this as well as gaff tape, because this won't leave a residue. And this is intended for this purpose. So it's heat resistant. It's not going to mess anything up. So what you can do with this is you can tape it to your lights, and you could use it to create barn doors to control the spill of light, or you could use a bigger piece to wrap around the light to create a snoot, or you could create really whatever shapes that you want. And so I always keep a few pieces of these in my bag just in case, especially if you were shooting in a small space where there's like a lot of white walls and now the light's bouncing everywhere. And I can be like, oh, I don't want it to bounce off this white wall. You can just tape it onto the side, and now you have control.
It's also heavy gauge, so it holds shape. If you try this with thin foil, you'll watch it just like droop and go away from whatever you were trying to do. Okay. It's also got a binding to it so that the black doesn't flake off. If you try to spray paint foil and you try to crumple it up,
here's another piece of
there goes your black.
Yeah.
You can check out the video on my channel on that. Woo, what?
Yay. Great. Okay, so yeah, you can do that. So right now we are going to be working with 3 lights. This one's not on. I'm saving that for later. We'll see if I use it. So I've got my Fresnel on the top. I've got my blue fill, and then I've got my light over here that has the cinefoil on. I'm using the modeling light so I can actually see where it's pointed. And I'm going to sculpt it a little bit more. Maybe I'm thinking like a little glow behind her head, something like that. So as Seth was saying, I can actually like literally shape this, which is great. So maybe there. It's not a perfectly round shape. If you want it to be round, use a grid. Sorry. All right. So Lex, I'm going to have you point this or shape it based on how it's looking in the photo. I believe I want to point it a little higher to be behind her head, but we'll take a test. Thank you. Okay. Oh yeah, definitely. Can you scrunch it down? Great. You keep going more. Let's just see. All right, let's test that. And point it more to the left for me. You can just rotate it. Yep, right there. Let's test. See how it's looking. Ooh, I like that. Yeah, this is why I said I just was experimenting. It's not right or wrong, but I think it makes the photo have a little more depth. Yeah. It doesn't look as flat. And yeah, it's not like a bright highlight behind her head, but I'm into it. Okay, honestly, like that's good. I'm gonna shoot a few more, but that's great. We'll move on to the next one. You look gorgeous. Ooh, love. Perfect. Okay, awesome. Those look great. All right, so let's go on to another one of these headpieces here. You can take that one off. And if anyone in the audience, I can tell you want to wear this, just kidding. If anyone wants to see how this is made, you can take a look at it. Let's try this one. Cool. You want to grab the nan light? Okay, so this is our tree topper headpiece here. I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to leave approximately the same setup for a second. Let's see. Okay. Tell me.
Someone in the chat's asking, what would be the power difference between the key, which is your Fresnel, and your gelled fill light?
Yeah. So the question was, what's the difference in the powers between my Fresnel key and my fill light? It all depends on how bright or how dominant you want the fill light to be in the shot. So in the original shots where I said it was kind of dark and subtle, it was probably closer to like 2.5 stops less than the main, where it's just like a little bit of blue. So for example, if my main was f11, so 2.5 stops, so f8, f5.6, maybe it's f4, f4.5, somewhere in there. But in this case, it's closer to like maybe a stop and a third under. So there's not a formula, it's just what's good for the color and what you're trying to go for. Okay, so I have turned this off. I'm going to take this off as a example that I'm not using it, okay? Yeah.
One question.
Yeah.
So when you are shooting, you are putting the fill light, right?
Uh-huh.
Blue gel. So in earlier images, in the previous images, I can see the skin changes tones because of the shadow.
Yep.
So is
I saw that.
good?
So here was an example here. If you look at her just above the top, you can see a little bit of the skin tone change. And that's because the blue is not hitting that area. So one of the things you could do is if you move your light a little further to the side and raise it up, if the blue is filling in that area, the problem would go away. But alternatively, if you really like the placement, there's, you don't have the room, you don't like the shadow, the other thing you could do is specifically select that shadow area. So I've made that selection, and then I could cool that down and put it in the same color palette. Or if you go into Photoshop, you select the two, I would do generative fill and it'll get rid of it that quickly. But you can fix it with lighting if you catch it. You look thoughtful.
Your mic keeps going out. I can't figure it out.
You can get in there. I'm just trying to problem solving here.
Go shoot.
Sorry.
I'm fine, man.
Okay, good. All right, so we're gonna make an adjustment here, and I'm gonna try a creative in-camera technique because I'm going to mix studio lights and continuous lights. So when you are shooting with studio strobes, it is a very fast flash duration. The number of how fast your flash fires, it depends on the strobe, but let's just say 1/1000th of a second. So 1/1000, that's how long the flash will be on. Again, depends on the strobe you have. So no matter what, if the subject's moving, it's going to freeze them in place. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a continuous light. The continuous light, to pick this up, for this to show up, I'm going to use a really slow shutter speed. And so it'll show up over time, but that lets me add some motion blur on purpose. This is something called dragging your shutter or shutter drag. I have several videos on Adorama TV that you can watch if you want a little bit more of a breakdown on this. So we're gonna problem solve and see if that looks good, because I'm looking at that headpiece and it's the same thing, right? It's reflective. So if she's turned away from the main light and she's facing towards you all, it's probably just gonna be black. It's not gonna reflect anything because this is all shadow to the strobe. So then it gives me an opportunity to add in a continuous light that I could then move and streak and make a cool effect. So I'm gonna test that out. So you don't have to turn it on yet. Will you kill lights for me? Okay. All right, so I turned off my fill light. I just wanna see what we're working with here. Actually, will you turn off that one as well? We'll start from the beginning. We'll just start with the Fresnel on. Great. Okay, can you turn this direction? Perfect. I think we can tighten the light. Oh, it's not, everything looks pretty. It's just great. This is pretty people, right? It's true though. She looks beautiful and everything. Okay, let me try that one more time. So here's what we have going on. The Fresnel that you see is lighting from her face to her shoulder, and there's a little bit of it spilling on the background. If I didn't want it there, I could move her further from the background, or I could tighten the Fresnel so that it's lighting a smaller area. But you'll notice that headpiece she has on, you don't see much of it. It's not really reflecting much because the Fresnel is pretty tight on her. So if I want to actually see it, I need to give it something to reflect. So we're going to try without a background light first. So let's introduce this. I'm going to show them real quick. All right. This is the Nanlite Pavo tube, and this is the 2-foot one. I use these all the time. What's nice is that it is a full RGB light, so I can change it to any color that I want and kind of dial it in. It's pretty bright that you can see. And they make 2-foot, 4-foot. You can gang up 2 of them if you want it to be even stronger. And I can also change the saturation. So we're going to try this to reflect in that headpiece. So I'm actually watching it with my eye. So right now, my camera settings are 1/200th of a second, f11, ISO 100. I'm going to take a photo with this and see what it looks like. And will you do me a favor? Will you pick a pose and hold it for a little bit? That one was perfect. All right, let's take a test. Okay, so in comparing these two shots, if I zoom in real close, I can see a tiny bit of blue. It's hardly at all. And that's because this is a continuous light, so it's not registering at these camera settings. These camera settings are intended to get rid of ambient light. So to get it to show up, I need to either change my camera settings and turn down the power of the strobe, or I'm going to drag my shutter, which we're going to try. Let's try I'm going to try a 1/10 of a second. Let's see. So 1/10. I'm going to try the exact same frame at 1/10 and see what it looks like. Thank you. Let's zoom back out. Oh, except for that didn't fire. Hold on. Let's fire that again. That's what I meant to do. Perfect. So in comparing, this is the picture on the left is at 1/200th of a second. The picture on the right is at 1/10. So I'm starting to see more blue. If I want to see even more blue, I'm gonna, like, for those of you that are newer to strobes, just bear with me, this will be like a little complicated. But if I wanted to see more, the first thing I could do is a slower shutter speed. So I could go from a 1/10 to 1/5 to like a full second. It's too much for me. So in order to see more, what I'm actually going to do is change my camera settings. I'm going to go and make this more sensitive to light. So I'm going to go from ISO 100 to, let's say, ISO 400. So it's making it 2 stops of light more sensitive. But that means this light will be double, quadruple. It's going to be way overexposed. So I have to compensate with the power. So I'm going to go down 2 stops. So let's see. 1 stop down, 2 stops down. Let's try it again. And I believe it worked, but I can't see. We'll test. I'm not convinced that went down. Hold on. Oh, it did. Okay, much better. So, and Lex, I will need a battery in a second. So here's to take you through that again. Here's with 1/200th of a second here, okay, 1/200th. Then this is when I went to a 1/10 of a second. I saw more, but it still wasn't bright enough. So I bumped up my ISO 2 stops, which would have made the face too overexposed. So I turned that down 2 stops, and now it made it more sensitive to that blue, but the face is not as overexposed. So now I want to try and see what I can do with some of that shutter drag. I want to purposely try to move it a little. We're going to see what it looks like. So can you slightly turn your head this way? Great. Perfect. I'll just try. Ooh. So what I'm doing is I'm moving my camera literally just side to side over that 1/10 of a second. Perfect. And same thing with your chin this way. It's just, and the reason I'm telling her to turn her chin this way is if she looks back this way, it's not reflecting the blue. I can actually see it with the modeling light. Well, with the continuous light, I can actually see it there. And now I'm going to try zooming, and I'm going to try moving, and moving and zooming. And each one does something different, so I just keep experimenting. This is where it's art, not science. It's just a little bit of movement. Like, that's cool. Looks like it's snowing. I'm getting snowy vibes. Okay. That's another. I'm just tweaking it just a little bit here to see what I like. Okay, I'll do a couple more of those, and we'll see if I like it with a background light, and then I'll move on to the last one. Thank you. Okay, let's just see. That's perfect. Let's do horizontal, so I have more room to blurry. Okay. And one more. All right, let's try the background light, if you will, Lex, for one more try. Oh, I like that one. That's cool. Super snowy. Okay. And can you turn the modeling light on? Sorry. So I'm having her turn the modeling light on that back one because then I can see where the white is lining up behind. It might overpower the blurry factor, so I might not like it. We'll see. I think I like the other better. You hear it, right? I guess so. It's not that bad. Okay. So anyway, there's another take on this with the background on. So I'm going to have her change while we go through the last ones. So if you will change into the red and put a red lip on, we're going to end with the red bow. Okay. All right. Thank you. Let's give this a quick adjustment. Seth, Would you lower the gray for me, please? If you guys have any questions while she gets that changed, what I'm having her do is I have her change into a red dress. It's a red sparkly dress that I got on Amazon for $60. So this is not an expensive couture dress. And then I'm having her put a red lip on because we're going to add the red bow. So I want to reinforce the concept that we're going for. So we're going to switch into a red color palette. Yes? The question is during the last one, could I move the blue light to get a streaking effect? So it might, for example, reflect off more of the headpiece, but it wouldn't be moving enough to get the same streaking effect. I actually have to see her move to do it. The other part is it's such a fast exposure. It's only 1/10 of a second. So my assistant would have to be just doing this to see anything different. Whereas for me at that 10th, I can just keep doing this. It's a little bit easier. And by the way, a question people always have is that I'm on first curtain sync when I'm doing the shutter drag. The reason why is typically when people do that blur effect, they think that you would want to be on second curtain. The common example is if somebody's on a bike, you don't want to do first curtain because it'll freeze them and then the blur will be the bike in front of them. It doesn't make sense. Here, there's no direction of motion. It's just blur stuff, like it's just creative. If I did second curtain and I were moving my camera, I don't know where my frame would be. Like if I went like this and then it fired at the end, she might just be like cut off. So I do first curtain because when I click, I can see where she is in the composition and then jerk my camera away and it doesn't matter where the exposure ends. So first curtain on this one. Okay, so any other questions before I move on to this tweak? Yes?
When you're doing color sort of palettes, do you take any consideration into like what they might be wearing, absorbing any of the light, or is that not really something that happens?
No, totally. So the question was, if I am lighting somebody, do I take into any consideration the color that they're wearing? 1,000%. For example, if I photographed her in the blue dress, the red dress she's about to put on, but I light it with a blue gel, that dress is going to look like almost blackish, dark, like you won't see it at all. So I purposely in the previous shot had her in silver for that reason. In this setup, if I use a gel on her, it would be red because that's what's going to show up on the red. So yeah, totally. And you can kind of test this out yourself, but this is why if you ever see me use gels, 90% of the time she's wearing a silver sparkly dress because it shows the color the best. Okay. All right, so let's do, I'll show this real quick. This was, by the way, this was the other one that I showed that I mentioned really briefly. This was the one that was $4 worth of, it's like snowflake decorations, but you can see that it's kind of just glued and layered upon each other. Probably for time, I won't do this one, but same exact concept as the previous headpiece. If you shoot something like this that you make, it's super reflective. So if she's facing away from the light and you are using strobes, it won't work. So I would either need to have a light source here or a continuous light or some sort of reflector that has a light into it in order for this to actually show up. Sparkles, reflective mirrors, they see what it's reflecting. They see the environment. So just remember you'd have to light the environment or get something lit for it to actually show up. Yeah.
So is it best just to use continuous light for most of the time?
Good question. So the question was, is it best to use continuous light most of the time? The answer is if you're first getting into photography, continuous light is a heck of a lot easier to figure out because you can actually see it. It's what you see is what you get. However, in certain situations, strobes like these are going to be better in many cases like this, where there's a lot of ambient light, because I can overpower all of this. Whereas if I'm using continuous light, all of this affects my shot if I can't turn it off. So if you're in like a daylight studio where you've got big windows and you don't want that window light to show up in your shot, you would have to do strobes or lots of curtains, lots of V-flats to block it out. So it depends on what your studio space looks like. If it's your living room, how dark can you get your living room? If you can get it real dark, continuous light will work. Okay. All right, let's try to build in a little bit more. So for this last one, I am going to gel the background to make it red. Obviously, you could use a red background if you have one. I'm just kidding. I didn't ask for one. I'm just kidding. I'm going to show you. We're going to gel it red. Okay, so I'm going to take this off. You have two for me there? Great. So, yeah, you can tape it onto both and then make them both the same power. So the gels kit that I'm going to be using here is I'm going to use the Roscoe Color Effects kit. This kit, I forget, I think it has 15 different colors. I couldn't remember if it was 15 or 18. Yeah. These are something that are called like party gels or creative colors. So you'll notice I've got like magenta and bright blue and teal. This is like the fun creative stuff. I recommend if you're getting a kit to get 2 of these, because in the example here, I'm going to put a gel on both of my background lights and I do want them to match. So just a consideration. So I'm going to put this super saturated blood red gel in the background. And the one thing that I want you to keep in mind is for this shot, the more that my main light spills on the background, the less red that background will look. Basically, if your main light is white light, when it hits the background, it desaturates and washes out the color. So this is why it's recommended to use a tighter light, a beauty dish with a grid, a softbox with a grid, something to control the spill a little bit. Or if you have a huge space, take your subject and move them as far away as you can fit them, because then you don't have to worry about that main light spilling as much.
So when you take control of the grid, like for the spilling, that way it won't be too much red or too much.
It won't be too. If you add a grid to like a beauty dish, it means it won't be too much light hitting the background.
Okay.
You look great. Yeah. So we're gonna test this. Okay, I'm not sure what we're gonna do with this one yet, but we'll test you. And I definitely can take I probably can take the front off. We'll test. Okay, will you step forward a bit? Great, so this is like I said, my $60 red dress that I've used 8 billion times. It's one of the kit ones. We're gonna see, maybe it goes there and you kind of like, cute, okay. All right, I'm gonna turn this on so you can see. So we're gonna test the red background first. And in this space, because I have no modifier on this, some of that red might hit the side of her face. I don't know if it's a bad thing. Like it might be a nice little red rim light. It could work. We're gonna test it. Let's go to 5.5. And then angle it more towards the middle a little bit. And is this one on or off at the moment? Okay, great. I'm just gonna rotate this because it was leaking out the side a little. All right, will you, actually I can turn it off. I'm gonna turn off my main light. I wanna see what's going on with the background, just to start off with. And by the way, perfect. I need to not shoot at 1/10 of a second anymore, right? So I'm gonna go back to 1/200th. We'll try ISO 200 f11. If I wanted to get it accurate, I could use a light meter. Or I could make it look good, which is what I'm gonna do. We're just gonna figure it out in the moment. Okay, so I'm resetting my camera settings over here. So main light, I'm going to attempt to turn off. Just make sure it's off, I got it, perfect. All right, let's just see. Not bad. Okay, I'm gonna go up on those two. Can you actually, I didn't group them, so can you go up another, wait, I lied. I haven't turned on my main light yet, so rather than having her change those lights, I can just go up on my ISO or open up my aperture a little bit to make them look correct. So let's just do it. We'll go from 200 to 400, and then let's try F8 instead of F11, trying the same thing. Beautiful. So notice I said that there was some red spill on her face. I'm okay with it. I think it looks nice. But obviously, now everything is black in the front, so I want to lighten it up. So I'm going to try this, but we're going to see. Because in a perfect world, I'll pull you up a little bit, and can you move this back a little? I'm trying to add a little bit more distance between her and the background so the light won't spill on it quite as much. We're going to see if I need to switch my modifiers. And let me scoot this way a little. All right, so let's turn on that main light. Okay. I got it, and then I think...
You just did all of them at once.
No, I didn't mean to do them all at once. Okay. So let's see. I think those stayed the same, right? Yeah. All right, now. Perfect. Let's just test this. Oh, I have no idea what this exposure. Oh, not so bad. Yeah. Okay, that exposure was accidental, but looks great. Okay. I mean, I kind of just let it do its thing, and then I was going to adjust. Not too bad. It's still a little hot, but I don't mind it. By the way, when I'm shooting red, I regularly go into post-processing and tweak it. So I'm going to go into my color editor. I'm going to specifically select red, and then I can adjust it to be more orange or more magenta. So I could make it pink if I wanted a pink Christmas. I could also darken it down to make it a little richer. And then you'll notice the color of the bow and the background are different colors, right? Well, what I would do is I'd create another layer later on, do that AI selection, and select one of the two and tweak them. So for example, I could take the background, which is what I'm selecting now, then go into that red and make it a little bit more magenta to match. So like, let's see. It's a little more, let's go a little bit more than that. Oh, sorry, on the background, hold on, let me go to this one. Let's make it a little more there. So in these two, see how the reds got closer together? Yeah. I selected the red and I pushed it more magenta because the bow was more magenta. So technically you can take this adjustment and apply it down, but it slows down. So I'm actually gonna reset that just so you know. It will look for the same selection, but it really uses a lot of computing power, so I don't wanna worry about it. All right, I actually think it's pretty good. Let me just like lift her chin up a little bit, bring it in a little bit cuter, and I think that'll be perfect. What died? This died? Okay, no problem. By the way, so we're using the Profoto B10X Plus, so it's the 500 watt ones. They just came out with ones that are 750 watts. So brand new strobes. There might be other battery operated ones in the market that are that strong, but not that I've ever seen. But even though these are battery operated, you can plug them in. So you can use them as studio lights. We just didn't. So we're switching the battery now and try it again. Thanks, love. Okay, yeah. And then, yeah, can you bring it real close to your face and then turn your chin up that way? Beautiful. Ooh, yes. Oh, so pretty. Yes, you have a great face. Okay, good. And let's try some, bring it way close to your face, like right up there. Beautiful. Let's see. How about your left hand? Let's bring it in even closer. So I want to see both hands. And then if I had, or if this were like a real shoot where I could do it, I'd probably paint those nails red, you know, like lean into it. Maybe give her like a red earring that had a little ornament on it, like a little Christmas ball, like lean into it a bit. Perfect. Beautiful.
Someone's asking if you still have your filter on.
I do have my filter on, not on purpose. Good call, audience member. One more time, I'll do a few more. That's perfect. So she fixed her fingers. What I was gonna say is I thought the fingers looked weird here, but I think she's seeing it and she fixed it because she's also a photographer, which is a great thing to have in a model. She knows what she's doing. And then chin up just a little. Oh, love that, right there. And a little softer, a little happier. And I'll kind of giggle to the light. Perfect. Okay, I know I've got one in there that'll be great. So basically what I would tweak in the end is just making the reds match and make them a little bit richer. Even though the skin looks a little bit overexposed, remember I've gone in and I've added contrast. So I can always bring that back down so that it's still very much in the correct exposure. All right, so I will wrap up. So thank you for being our beautiful model. You're wonderful. So guys, what I hope that you took away from this little demo is that I want you to look at my photos and I want you to think they look expensive. I want you to think they look high-end, but especially for things that are test shoots or holiday shoots, we're looking around and seeing how we can do this for $10 or less. So all of the styling we had there was made with things from the dollar store, Michael's, buying it online, $10 or cheaper, but you make it look good with your lighting and your styling and your directing of your subject. So I hope everybody has a wonderful holiday season, and I will see you guys in 2025. So thanks for joining me.